Hello, and welcome to another 15 plus 10 game. So we have a Sicilian. I'll play the Alapin as I usually do. I usually try for a setup with knights on f3 and a3, but if my opponent commits to an ally at e6, I usually just push d4. Our opponent does play bishop e4, and usually this is just well answered by bishop e2. Then we have maybe some ideas of knight c4 coming to one of these squares, and the queen swing here with some pressure. Knight c4 immediately, bishop takes f3, does lose the... means I'd have to capture with the pawn, which isn't good. This should keep the knight. But queen a4 instead, I think, works out fine. Queen a4, a6, knight c4, b5, perhaps. Queen a4, a6. I think it should work, but I'm not sure how exactly. Queen a4, a6, b5 isn't a threat because of bishop takes b5. I'm using my pin. So I'll start with queen a4. Introducing this knight either coming to here or to here. Okay, we see e5. So if I go for knight c4, I think my opponent could play e4. And if I go for, say, knight b5, simply something like queen d8. So I think just playing d3 here to stop e4 from hitting the knight. Knight c4, e4, knight here. Queen drops back to d8, takes, is with tempo though. So maybe I should consider it slightly more. Knight e4, bishop takes, e4 is c4, bishop takes, e4, knight b6, queen drops back, taking the rook, taking here, and that gets trapped there, so I don't think it works out. So I'll go with d3. Just opening up the other bishop and hopefully bishop takes, queen takes, bishop takes. So I'm not losing a pawn there, I don't think. But the lines, I think, are starting to get quite concrete. So now knight c4 castles. I don't have knight b6 because of the fork. I could go for knight c4 castles, knight e3, but then bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, queen takes d3, and I can take on c6 to regain the pawn, but it doesn't seem at all worth it. So I may have gone astray somewhere, but I'm not exactly sure why. But for now, I think it would be best if I just castled, and then I maybe try to push with d4 in the future, if the d3 pawn doesn't eventually fall. Maybe bishop e3 to play rook d1, defend the pawn. I think I like the idea of bishop e3 and d1 the most. Just because it doesn't clearly lose the pawn, but suppose I immediately go for the bishop e3 and then go for the pawn. Then I can take here while the king is still uncastled, so they can't quite take yet. Would the bishop be any better on a different square? It might be better on g5 to just trade for the knight, but I think e3 is fine. The pieces are slightly in an unorthodox setup, but I think they should be pretty okay. h6 isn't a move to be scared about, so I think I can just castle here. Maybe pushing d4 in the future might be a nice idea. h3, I'll just drop the bishop back. I don't think I'm in a rush to do that. Let's just castle. So now I more feel like it might be sensible to push for d4, especially with black bringing a piece a bit away from the center. There is also the hanging bishop on g4, which is quite tempting to just take. I'm not seeing why I can't just do that, so I'll take that. So I suppose now there's the threat of taking on h6 because of the pin. Black might push for f5. I feel like that was their original intention. Although they are opening up that diagonal, so d4 becomes a lot more appealing if they push f5 here. Oh, they resign. Okay. That was a somewhat funny game. I felt like I managed to somehow slip into a somewhat worse position. I think I might have to either change up the line here that I play or further review or something. I'm sure this is fine. I think yeah, e6 is the thing. This has this trappy thing which I'm trying to play for. Knight c4, and if you go bishop e7, knight e3, and then if you take immediately, this is not. If you take immediately, you use a queen. Yes. Oh dear, it's been a long day. Queen h5, h3, bishop takes, queen drops back, then take. There's a way for black to limit the damage. I can't quite remember. Bishop takes, queen e5. I had this once, and then I had a used more advantage, which I managed to somehow lose. If queen rook d8 instead, knight e3. I think this was it. And then queen e5, and then it's correct to go after the pawn, but it's not so clear because the development is slightly unusual, and it is just a pawn for the moment. Yeah, I've had this position a few times. My opponent played e5 here though. I think the usual reaction is, I guess it's not just e3. Okay. So knight c4, e4. And what's the idea? Knight e3. Yeah. Then the queen drops back. I guess takes. And the pawn on e4 is hanging. Wow, okay. So if the queen drops back to e6 instead, knight e5, queen e7, queen e5. Now this doesn't seem good for black. So does e4 work here? That's the important question. Knight e6 is the line that I looked at, and I don't think this works out. You have to drop the queen back here. And you take here. Up in exchange, but this knight is trapped, so after I suppose this bishop just drops back. You don't have enough for that rook. This is dropping, you've ruined your structure. Yeah, so that line isn't good. This line isn't good for white, but Knight e3. I thought this wouldn't work because of this pawn on e4 sticking around, but if it's forced to disappear, if you take back with queen, the pawn stays defended. And yeah, I guess knight e5, but this I don't think tends to not be good for white. So I think my eventual decision of d3 was correct. Bishop e7, yeah. Maybe knight c4 here now, but if black just castles... No, I thought... Well, I suppose maybe this is generally good for her. No. I'm sure there was a good line here somewhere, and... Because I wouldn't choose lines which intentionally led to white being worse, but... I cannot for the life of me recall what the path to equality. I think the e5 line was equal and then everything else was slightly worse. And forgive me, it's been a while since I looked at these lines. Yeah, castling, because knight b6, you just take. Queen d7, yeah. Knight takes d4, but the bishop pair isn't worth this, I don't think. Something. Okay. And like, maybe black is a bit better here, since I haven't played, so I managed to get like a Maroxy, sort of a Maroxy bind, but with the E file instead of the C file. But then just dropping the bishop for nothing, I guess, it's just too much. Yeah. That was an unfortunate way to lose. I guess I've managed to recoup the rating loss from the previous two games with that, which is a somewhat funny way to do things. Okay, so Queen e4 is really well scoring, but isn't good at all. That is fair. So that's probably because people mostly go into the line with e6, but e5 is just good. So if you just castle, you go e6, d3, just becomes a standard kind of position, I think. Yeah. d3 holding the knight, so that bishop takes. There's no queen takes. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Sorry about, I guess, a slightly shorter video than usual. And hope to see you tomorrow.